have socialized medicine. If you're bragging about socialized medicine, that is the lamest, most beta thing to be proud of ever.
You know the difference?
I get a prostate exam for free. If that's what you're bragging about, no. This is a nation that used to rule the subcontinent.
I actually have
ruled the world.
I actually have had a prostate exam for free.
But like, that's how degraded it is. Like, you literally talk to them. Even the right-wing Brits are like, well, I can't criticize the NIH.
All right.
Because
you know what?
The flower of British civilization is building socialized shitty medicine.
Listen. I'll take this to a point.
All right, everyone, we need to talk about something that's going to shake up the conversation today: Western civilization. Is it actually thriving, or are we watching its slow collapse in real time? Some say Churchill saved the West, but if that's true, why does it look like it lost? And what about Britain today? Is it a shadow of its former self? Tucker Carlson and Piers Morgan just had an explosive debate on these very questions, and we're breaking it all down. Before you jump into the comments to defend your side, let's actually talk about it. Was the victory in World War II just a short-term win that led to long-term failure? Or are we just nostalgic for a past that was never as strong as we thought? Let's get into it.
And his nominees, and I think he wants to resist it, is my sense. Because the people pushing it have an unbroken track record of failure and destruction. It's like it's not like if you're some, neocon foreign policy theorist, you can point to like a lot of successes. Look what we did in Libya.
Right.
How's Iraq doing?
Well, someone said the other day,
it's insane. They're insane.
Has America won a war since World War II?
Well, you're assuming we won World War II, but
well, you certainly helped us win it.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the worst leader in world history probably won it, Stalin. But whatever.
Right. He was certainly a major part of it too.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Although we're going to come to you platforming a guy called Churchill, the real villain of World War II.
Platforming. People we disagree with.
Did you disagree with him about that? Did you think Churchill was a villain?
I think your country's been destroyed, and I'm part English, so I have a right to say this. I can barely go there. It's so depressing and degraded. No offense. I mean that with great sadness.
Taken. Many people there feel the same.
Well, I feel that way. I have relatives there. I mean, I grew up going there. I mean, I'm part English. I have a right to say this. So I don't think.
What is your English connection?
Well, the Tuckers, English. And I have relatives there now, so I don't want to embarrass them by saying they're there. But and my point is, I've spent my life going there. I've always loved it. There are things about it I love now, but I go to London now, and I'm shocked by it. It's disgusting, and no self-respect at all. The people, the native English, the indigenous population of your island have no self-respect at all, and they can't even stand up and say, "Hey, get out of here." Like we have way too much immigration, and it's not making the country better. It's making it much worse. And not just immigration, but replacing your manufacturing economy with a finance economy, where the sleaziest people in the world come to London and like sell off all your assets, and no one can say anything about it. So I'm very distressed. I say that with love. And my only point is, how can you say Churchill saved Great Britain when it's in its current condition?
Well, you could say he certainly saved it at the time. I mean, he saved us from the Nazis, along with America.
Were the Nazis planning to invade?
We couldn't have won it without America, so let's be clear about that. But there's no doubt that, to me, that Winston Churchill will go down as one of the great historical figures, because without his leadership, I genuinely do not think that the Allies would have won that war.
Well, you wouldn't have been in the war without Churchill, but in the first place.
Well, we were in the war without Churchill. We were already in it.
Not to the extent that you became in it.
Well, hang on. He wasn't prime minister.
No, I'm very aware. Yeah. I'm very aware. I think Churchill was one of the smartest people, certainly one of the best writers ever to hold any office in any country. I think he was a wonderful artist. I think he had a kind of flair that's irresistible, particularly to Americans. I think Americans like Churchill much more than the Brits do. You kicked him out of office at the end of the war, so obviously.
But then we brought him back.
You brought him back. Here's my problem with Churchill. Again, the current state of Great Britain does not look to me like a country that won a war. It looks like a country that lost a war badly and was degraded. How did that happen? Why? You're not allowed to ask that because people are like, oh, that's Holocaust denial. I'm not Holocaust denial. That's one thing I would never deny. All these people got murdered. I'm not denying that at all. I'm talking about specifically Great Britain, the country of a lot of my ancestors, looks like it lost a war. How did that happen? I think it's a totally fair question. And anyone who says it's not a fair question is a liar. And I'm not going to be intimidated because I'm part English. So buzz off. What's the answer? And so I don't think that you can.
You can't put it on Churchill.
Well, I don't put it entirely on Churchill.
You can't put any of it in Churchill because
well, so
actually, if you look at the 60s, you would say that Britain was absolutely roaring post-war, right? It's
Not
only
really. Your manufacturing was dying.
well,
You were rationing until the 50s. Like, how did this work?
well, because we've just been in a world war.
I'm saying that's an awfully slow recovery for a winning nation. If you won, why did you have rationing for 10 years after? But here's the real problem, to be much more specific about Churchill, who is someone I really would love to have met. I think he's an extraordinary person and an incredibly charming person, the most charming. I don't know how you could say to the English people, it is essential that your sons go die to preserve the territorial integrity of Poland, and then hand Poland to Stalin, of all people. I don't know how you could be in an alliance with Stalin, the greatest mass murderer in history. I don't know how Roosevelt could be in an alliance with Stalin. Once you're in an alliance with Stalin, you lose all moral authority.
So what do you do about it?
You are not allowed to lecture me about anything if you're in a military alliance with Joseph Stalin.
Let me take you back
who
then.
murdered all the
Let me make you president.
tens of millions of people.
All right, let me make you president of the United States at the time. What else do you do about Adolf Hitler, given that it was crystal clear his ambition was not going to stop with Poland? He wanted to wage a world war. He wanted to seize
He wanted to invade the Soviet
endless
Union,
countries.
which he wanted to invade the Soviet Union. I'm very anti-Hitler. I've always been anti-Hitler. He killed a lot of people and who didn't deserve to die, and destroyed his country. So I'm certainly not defending Hitler. So preemptively to anyone who says I am.
Well, what would you have done about it?
Shut up. I would act as any president has a moral obligation to act in what he believes is the best interest of his country. Period. Not in the interests of humanity, the world, of his own country. These are countries. These are nation states.
Isn't that what America did after Pearl Harbor? You couldn't just sit back and...
I mean, we're getting into this super complicated. Look, I'm not against fighting World War II. I'm not. I'm not. I'm only saying specifically with reference to Churchill. You can't go to your country, your countrymen, and say, go ahead and die to preserve the dignity of Polish territorial integrity, of the dignity of Poland, the nation of... And then give it to Stalin, and it languishes under an iron curtain, and people are murdered and rounded up and tortured to death for 40 years.
But that wasn't what Churchill did.
Yes, it is what Churchill did.
Because he came in after the war started.
No. At Tehran, Potsdam, Yalta, they made a deal to hand Eastern Europe, which he had brought his country to war to protect, to Stalin. There is no getting around the fact that Stalin is maybe the worst person in all human history, but certainly in the running, up there with Hitler. I mean, you could kill more people than Hitler. I mean, they're all evil.
I don't disagree.
So you're in a military alliance with Joseph Stalin? You shut the fuck up. You have no right to lecture me about anything, okay? That's where we start. And that's been sort of a lied over. The Roosevelt administration armed Stalin in Lend-Lease. Tell me how that's defensible. It's not defensible.
But the question I was asking...
But to hand Poland, which you went to war to protect,
I hear you.
Stalin, like, why doesn't someone answer that question? They're like, oh, we had no choice. Really?
But what my question, though, is...
Then you're a failed leader.
But what would you have done about Hitler?
Well, I would have opposed him, of course.
How?
I certainly wouldn't arm Stalin. I certainly...
So what would you have
murdering
done? Christians
in...
No, but what would you have done? I'm genuinely curious.
I have no idea what I would have done. I would have been opposed to him. I am opposed to him. I mean, it's not... So I love this conversation. So it's like, there's no way to reassess anything without getting right to, so you're for Hitler, right? Or you would just let Hitler rampage through Europe or something.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm just curious, if you don't do what Churchill did, I'm curious what you think we should have done.
You act on behalf of your country. That's your job.
Yeah, I think
if you're a theologian, well, you certainly didn't. Look at it. Have you been there?
Well, my country,
yes.
Of course. I live in my country.
Oh, okay, right. So you know. No one looked after Great Britain. It ran the world. Now it's degraded. Now you have Sadiq Khan like giving the finger to Christianity in your capital city. Like, what? This is the seat of Protestantism globally. This is, your king is the head of my church. And anyway, whatever. So it's been a total, there's been conquest, they're vanquished, and they lack self-respect. So you have to look to their leaders and say, what decisions did they make that got us to this point? And I really feel this strongly because I think it's a big deal historically. Like, we're going to look back. I don't think England becoming what it's become, they don't even call it England anymore. I don't think you're allowed to call it England?
You can, yeah.
Yeah, you can. You're not really allowed. You have to throw Wales in there. I don't think you can look at this just as like the decline of a formerly great power. You have to see it in broader terms. This is the end of something really great and important that we should have defended and we didn't.
I would say the biggest problem that Britain's had, but specifically England, is in the 50s we had a population of about 50 million people. All the infrastructure, the National Health Service, which was great at the time it was conceived and great for many years, now just simply cannot cope with a population that's just about 70 million and is predicted to go in the next 5-6 years up by another few million. And that's just net zero migration up. And I look at that and I think that successive governments, Conservative, Labour, now for 30 years, have completely failed to protect the country from the impact of massively increasing the population size. And they've not been able to adapt to that. And now what you have is increasing resentment from people in the country to the fact that all the public services are crumbling before their eyes, and they are blaming it all on the extra number of people who've come in, which is partly to blame, but probably not wholly to blame. In other words, it almost gives the government an excuse, which is we have a big more population, rather than actually successive governments have been pretty poor, pretty ineffective.
I guess. I mean, that's the technocratic explanation for it. And I think everything you've said is true. By the way, there was great resentment in the 1970s, and it was ruthlessly put down.
Yes.
Ruthlessly put down. It's all.
Well, Margaret Thatcher came along and she took decisive action. My point is it comes down to leadership.
No, it comes down to self-respect. Do you believe that your country represents something worth preserving?
But I think Thatcher did that, you see. And when she went to war...
She didn't. So she took on the unions. Okay, great. That's great. But nobody has reestablished since the end of World War II, 1945, in the minds of the British people, you are unique in the world. You're the indigenous population of this island. You have something great to offer the world. This is a seed of Protestant Christianity. Your culture, your language, your views, your attitudes, your customs, your traditions, those are all worth defending because they're great. That's the basis of any country. In Saudi Arabia, they feel that way about their country. This is Saudi Arabia. We're the most important country in Islam. You know, we're the leader of the Arab world, which they are. They're very proud of it. Great. I'm not a Muslim or an Arab, not from the Middle East. I come here. They're like, great. So glad to have you. By the way, you're not allowed to change the laws here because you're not Saudi. Great Britain lacked that self-respect. The United States increasingly lacks that self-respect and that belief that their way of doing things is a good way and worth fighting for. If you don't have that, then it's just like a massive home invasion where you're not willing to stand up and defend your wife and children. And so you get enslaved. I
do think
that's the rule of the world.
Well, I certainly think Britain has lost its way and it's lost its pride and it's lost its ability to show the world we matter. And we've become increasingly irrelevant.
But your values, your ideas, freedom of discourse. I see it now. You're putting people in prison, literally in prison for Facebook posts. And it's like, obviously that's authoritarian, but it's deeper than that. It's like, no, this is England. This is the country that gave free speech to the United States. This is where it all came from. This is where habeas corpus came from. The Magna Carta was signed here. This is Western civilization. We talk about Western civilization. What is it? It's England, actually. And so if you allow it to become what it is now, Western civilization ends. I don't think that's overstating it at all. If Saudi Arabia fell today and became Buddhist or something, it would have a massive effect on the entire region. The holy sites are here, right? It's much more significant merely than its landmass.
Let me ask you about...
And the same was true for your country. It was hugely significant for us in the U.S. We're your descendants. And we did what you did, but with much more land and resources. So I'm very distressed about it. So people want to tell me Churchill's an incredible guy. Really? Well, why didn't he save Western civilization? He didn't even save Poland.
He did.
What did he
He
save?
did save Western
How?
civilization.
How?
He defeated the Nazis.
But, I know he helped defeat the Nazis,
Well, the Nazis
with his friend Stalin.
The Nazis wanted the whole world to be speaking
I'm
in German.
not defending the Nazis. I'm just saying, where is Western civilization? What did he preserve? Where is it? I don't know where it is.
Churchill died the year before I was born. Oh, the same year, actually.
He died in 63, I think.
65.
65.
I think about a month before I was born. It was a natural succession. But the
but the question is where's the victory? I don't understand. Everyone wants to yell at you for not loving Churchill. Okay,
well, hang on.
Show me the victory.
Well, yeah, but
it's a theoretical victory.
All right, this is where people start getting uncomfortable. But let's be honest. If Churchill's leadership was so legendary, why does the UK look like a country struggling to stay relevant? If Western civilization was saved, where is it now? If you're still clinging to the idea that victory means survival, explain why Britain feels like it's on life support.
Oh, he beat Hitler. Great. I'm totally for beating Hitler.
Yeah, but
I'm totally
you
for
can't
beating
say
Hitler.
80 years on that Churchill didn't win the war, because look at what's happened since.
But the war is not just like an engagement in Poland or even in downtown Berlin. The war is the effort to save Western civilization. And I agree with you that Hitler was a grave threat to Western civilization, as Dietrich Bonhoeffer. But that was lost. So where's the victory?
Yeah, but it wasn't lost.
Really? Really? Where's
No.
it? Where's Western civilization thriving?
No, what has happened is you've seen Britain's power in the world diminishing ever since. That is true.
What is Western civilization?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would say that, for example, I would say one of the reasons that, well, the three reasons Trump...
It's Christianity, is what it is.
Well, that's, okay. I know you believe that strongly.
Well, what? Okay,
I'm
if
a
it's not
Catholic. I'm a
Christianity,
Catholic. You're preaching to the choir, literally.
no, but if it's not Christianity, what is it? It's Christianity. That's what it is. It's the political legacy of Christianity, and that's dying. And I'm not saying Churchill was its assassin. I'm just saying, like, he didn't save it because it's dying. And
Well, can we agree he saved us from the Nazis?
I guess, but I'm saying it was a Pyrrhic victory. I mean, beating the Nazis is always good. You want to beat the Nazis, okay? I'm for beating the Nazis, to be clear. The Nazis were a threat to Western civilization. They're a threat to Christianity. But if Churchill saved it, where is it?
Well, I think that's a perfectly legitimate question.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
And they call me a Holocaust denier for bringing that up.
I don't call you that.
Well, no, but I'm just saying, like, I got so attacked. But that's not only a legitimate question, it's the question. And I'm very upset about it because I think Western civilization is the best thing this world has ever produced.
Can I ask you about something that happened big in the American election, which we're now wrestling with in our country? Wokeism, the woke mind virus. It seemed that Trump's core of common sense prevailed, that a lot of people rejected and repudiated all the woke bullshit. That advert, Kamala's for they, them, Trump's for you, was incredibly effective. What do you feel about that? Do you think woke is dead as a concept, or is it dying, or are people going to try and revive it? I'm asking because two things have happened in the last few days where I thought, well, it's not dead yet. One was the bishop lecturing Trump.
My bishop.
Your bishop.
Marianne Edgar Budd.
I mean, I watched that. I thought she really hasn't got the memo here, which is we don't want to see a bishop do that in that way.
So she is the Bishop of Washington in the Episcopal Church, which is the Church of England in the United States. So this is like, I know you're Catholic, but it's like, that is directly from Great Britain. And that is a measure of what's happened to your country, if I can say. And I personally, since that's my church, I think it's probably a good thing for people to see what it's really like. You know, that this is not a Christian organization at all. This is a very angry, hateful organization run by like dreadfully unhappy middle-aged lesbians, which is exactly what it is. So only by showing that in public can it ever be forced to reform. So I actually thought it was a hopeful thing that the rest of America, not just we Episcopalians, could see what it's actually like, which is repulsive and totally non-Christian, it's pagan. But I think wokeism, look, is just one manifestation of something that has been at work in this world since Eden, which is evil. It's purely destructive. It exists under a very dishonest guise, which is like to help and enrich and uplift people. It does none of that. It's a purely destructive force designed to wreck institutions that were actually humane and divide people from each other along the lines of race and sex. And it's just evil, and we should say that. Of course, it'll live on in some other manifestation because evil in the world, will always be with us.
One of the reasons I think it got repudiated in such an emphatic way at the election in America was that Trump very cleverly went on a lot of shows, podcasts, YouTubers, Joe Rogan, shows like that, which his son Barron apparently was steering him to do because he recognized that people of his age, this is what they're getting their news from. You've now gone fully into this world. I've done the same.
Both of us got here involuntarily.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we sort of,
it's so great.
We got exited out of linear world. Yeah.
Yes.
How do you find? I mean, do you feel liberated? How do you feel about it?
Totally. I mean, I just feel I'm 55. We're very close to the same age, and I feel that all the really great things in my life have begun as disasters. That it's never, you're never on vacation where you reach enlightenment. Sitting on the beach in St. Bart's. It's always some tragedy. You get cancer, or someone you love dies, you get fired from your job. That's when your life, at least in my experience, changes for the better. So I'm so grateful for having been fired as often as I have. And this last one,
Well, to work out which of us has lost more jobs. It's quite a close wrong thing, actually.
you know, this is one thing I've always loved about your country, the journalism in your country, is that people get fired all the time.
Yeah.
You guys get fired
They're
all the
they're
time.
badges of honor,
I
actually.
love that. No, I've always.
It's like, how many times? Only 3?
No, I
What's the
don't.
matter with you? You're obviously not doing things nearly controversially enough.
And I'm sorry to beat up on your country. So I love the Brits. That's why I'm so mad.
Yeah, listen,
because I
the
love
reason
them.
I didn't rein back on what you were saying, because a lot of people in Britain do feel that. They do
I
feel,
know.
they feel we've lost our identity, our national pride. They're worried about what's happening in the country. They can see the infrastructure collapsing. The National Health Service used to be this great
They
beacon.
apologize for their empire. It's so much deeper than the
Yeah.
NHS was always stupid. I know you guys love it. We have socialized medicine. If you're bragging about socialized medicine, that is the lamest, most beta thing to be proud of ever.
You know the
I can
difference?
get a prostate exam for free. If that's what you're bragging about, no. This is a nation that used to rule the subcontinent.
I actually have
It
had
ruled the world.
I actually have had a prostate exam for free.
Okay, let's break this down. If free healthcare is the biggest flex, what does that say about the state of a country? Look, nobody wants to go bankrupt over a hospital bill, but if your national pride is tied to government-run medical care instead of a thriving economy, innovation, or global influence, maybe the problem runs deeper. Is healthcare a right, a privilege, or just another distraction from the real issues?
Like, that's how degraded it is. Like, you literally talk to them. Even the right-wing Brits are like, well, can't criticize the NIH.
All right.
Because
You know what?
the flower of British
All right,
civilization
all
is
right,
building
all right,
socialized shitty medicine.
Listen. I'll take this to a point. Okay.
You can't
I'll take this to a
criticize
point.
NHS.
But now I've got to
No,
defend
but
my
your
country.
empire was
Let me give you the
great in some
let me-
ways. Will you admit that?
Yes, but no. Listen. Of course,
Okay, good.
there were lots of great things about the
Yes.
empire. There were things we shouldn't have done.
Of course.
But this constant revisionist going back, wanting to apologize, wanting to pay vast sums of money to the descendants of people that they never knew, right? Centuries later, is utterly preposterous.
Apologizing on behalf of dead people
Mm.
is specious by its nature.
Let me tell you the difference.
I can only apologize for
if
myself.
if you come to London and
Yeah.
and we're walking on the road and
I'm never going again.
and you get hit by a car and you will go again, and you get hit by a car and you break a leg, you will get immediate, great, world-class healthcare, and you won't have to pay for it. When I broke some ribs in Santa Monica, falling off a Segway, one of the most embarrassing things in my life,
Yeah.
not least because when I'd been a newspaper editor and George Bush fell off a Segway, I said, what kind of idiot falls off a Segway as a
Or
headline?
rides
And then
Segway.
many years later, I fall off and break 5 ribs and collapse a
in
lung.
Santa Monica.
And then in Santa Monica, in the hospital there, and all I remember is coming in and out on a morphine haze in utter agony, and some guy in a doctor's robe standing over me with a form saying, have you got the ability to pay for the medication?
Just swipe your credit card as you come out of the haze.
Right, but you think that's a better system
No.
than mine?
I mean,
Come on.
look, it's a pile of crap and a pile of shit. You kind of like, if you have stage 4 pancreatic, probably better to be in the U.S. If you break your arm in a Segway accident, probably better to be in London. It's all kind of crappy, actually, and capitalism is an amazing engine. But there are downsides to it, and it's not a religion. So I think you can admit that a for-profit medical system has some ugly parts to it, and it definitely does. You can also admit that socialized medicine is kind of lame, because it is. And I don't know. By the way, getting sick is bad, right? And both England and the United States are super unhealthy countries, leaving the healthcare system apart. Everyone's fat. The food is terrible.
So, here's the real question. Is Western civilization truly saved, or is it just coasting on past victories while its foundations crumble? And more importantly, does anyone even care anymore? I want to hear your unfiltered take in the comments. No safe answers, no sugarcoating. Is the West in decline, or is this just a phase? And if it is falling, who's to blame? Let's see who's really paying attention.